Hey y'all, welcome to Real Value, where we recap, review, rate, and evaluate all things watched. I'm Cal, or Scaredy Cal, or Cal your horror pal. I don't know, I'm trying some different things, but you can't force it, you know? Anyways, today's video is over the oldest video I've done for the channel as of yet. Up until this point, the oldest movie I reviewed was 2022's Speak No Evil, and that was mostly in preparation for the 2024 version. If you haven't watched those, please do so. If you want the short and sweet version, original's better than the new one. But go like those videos anyways, it'll help the channel out. Anywho, the video we're reviewing today, which you already know because it's in the title and thumbnail, is 2003's Darkness Falls. That's right, we're covering a movie that's nearly 22 years old. To put that in perspective, back in 2003, that would have been like me covering a movie from 1981. We're old peeps. No, we're not. We're not. Age is just a mindset. We're fine. We're vigorous young men. We still have half our lives to go. I'm not old. I'm not old. Anyways, Darkness Falls is a supernatural horror film marking Jonathan Liebesman's feature directorial debut at the age of 26. Liebesman went on to direct the films Rings 2005, which was a 17-minute short that followed the events of the highly acclaimed film The Ring in 2002. It also served as a prequel for The Ring 2 that came out later that same year. He also directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning, that came out in 2006 with Jessica Biel. It was whatever. And then another movie he did was Battle Los Angeles from 2011, which I remember liking that one. The film stars Channing Clay, who also had roles in the FX series The Shield before he tragically passed away at the age of 34 in 2007 due to a drug overdose. That's harsh stuff. Rest in peace, my man. At his side was the actress Emma Caulfield, who began her career in TV series like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Beverly Hills 90210. But more recently has been in WandaVision, and I hear has also reprised her role in the Agatha All Along series. The story of Darkness Falls takes place in a town bearing the same name of the title, which... okay, I guess that's what you want to name your town. It centers on the character Kyle Wash, played by Clay, who, as a child, witnessed his mother's brutal death at the hands of Matilda Dixon, a vengeful spirit from the town's dark past. You see, Matilda here was lynched over a century and a half ago after she was falsely accused of killing 2 children. More on that later. And now her ghost haunts Darkness Falls as revenge. It gets better. Years later, Kyle returns when his love interest's younger brother, Michael, played by Lee Cormie, who hasn't really done anything since this movie. He's had a few roles here and there, but his character Michael becomes the newest target of the vengeful spirit. So to save him, Kyle must face the ghastly tooth thief and stop her deadly rampage. That's right, this film is about a psychotic, vengeful, evil tooth fairy apparition that is haunting the children of Darkness Falls for their teethies, their pearly whites. Hey man, I know what you're gonna say. Twat? But despite negative reviews, the film was a financial success. Not only did it debut at #1 its opening weekend, but it earned $47.5 million on an $11 million budget. In 2024, adjusting for inflation, that would be like a budget of $18 million, of which they grossed $81 million. What? So know what you're saying. Cal, Scaredy Cal, Cal my horror pal, how in the world did anyone not only buy into this, but give the green light for it to go ahead? The entire movie is actually based on a short film, and I mean short, like 4 minutes short, called Tooth Fairy, written and directed by Joe Harris, who would also co-write the screenplay for this expanded masterpiece, along with James Vanderbilt and John Fasano. So let that be a lesson to all you future filmmakers of the world. No idea is off limits. If you can get your point across in 4 minutes, maybe a studio will come up to you and be like, hey, can you add 82 more minutes to this and we'll make it a feature? Joe Harris also wrote a prequel comic book to the movie called Darkness Falls, The Tragic Life of Matilda Dixon. I looked on Amazon and found a collectible version for $30, but money is tight at the moment, so I didn't get it. Which reminds me, like, subscribe, share, help the channel grow. Donate to my Patreon if you can afford it. If not, just watch these videos and subscribe to the channel. But man, that blows my mind that They saw this 4-minute short film and were like, let's make that into a movie. Vengeful, rampaging Tooth Fairy movie. All right, so that's the setup and everything. This video is gonna be a little different than my others, as we're gonna focus more on the recapping probably than ever. Like, it's gonna be more of a retelling of the story because, one, the film is 21 years old and I doubt whether or not I think you should watch it will really have any sway over you in the end. And two, because it's flippin' hilarious. Not necessarily in a bad way, but also not in like they meant for it to be hilarious kind of way. It is such a product of its time, as you're sure to see, and it's weird to think that so much is different than it was in 2003. And then number three, this was the film that my BFFF Russell requested for me to review. Now, I know you guys don't know him, but you gotta understand, Russell's a big old teddy bear. He's like 6'1" or 6'2". I don't know, he's tall. Everyone's taller than me because I'm 5'7". 5'7" for the win, short king. And he's a big guy, and even though he's out of shape, I'm out of shape too. I'm pretty sure if he didn't hold back, he could still like kill someone with a punch to the face. So he's a big dude, but he's a big old teddy bear, and he hates scary movies like Freddy, Jason, blood, gore, not his thing. So much to the fact that one day I do want to get him and record him watching a movie with me late at night in the dark and kind of get a reaction video because I think it'd be hilarious. He does not like scary movies. But back to the point at hand, he picked this movie because he remembers that when it came out 21 years ago, what happened, man? He remembers 21 years ago that he liked the idea of the story. And before looking into it, yeah, I was like, Killer Psychotic Tooth Fairy, lame. I actually remember when it came out thinking that there's no way I'm ever going to watch that. And it took me 21 years until I finally did because he suggested it for this channel. But after looking into it, the way the film addresses it is actually not too bad. It's very acceptable in terms of the horror genre. I mean, if we can believe that a serial killer possessed a good guy doll or a dream demon can kill you while you're sleeping, or if an alien touches you, it can mimic your entire being down to the cellular level, then I think we can throw some cash into the wind and say like, all right, this woman turned into a vengeful, scary tooth fairy, evil monster lady, and that's what we're going off. That's the premise of the movie. Okay, just deal. Now, while watching it, I laughed and laughed. Again, it's a product of its time, and at the very least, I think you'll have fun viewing it. But it is very tame as far as today's standard goes with horror movies. It does have a lot of jump scares, which, whatever. But yeah. So we're going to get into it. We're going to get into a deep dive of Darkness Falls. So if you don't want any spoilers, I guess go watch it or whatever. But, oh man, it's 21 years old. This film can legally drink. Either way, watch this video, like this video, come back, tell me what you think, etc. All right, here we go. So the movie opens with the narrator giving us a little backstory. The legend goes, about 150 years ago lived a woman named Matilda Dixon. Matilda was a nice woman, well known throughout the town. In fact, children would go to her when they lost a tooth, and in return, she'd give them a gold coin, giving her the name the Tooth Fairy. That's right, that's where we're going with this. One night, however, Matilda's house mysteriously caught fire, and though she survived, it left her face badly burnt. So she stopped going out during the day because she looked hideous, but also because the sun's rays actually hurt her flesh, hurt her skin. Foreshadowing? So she only went out at night for the rest of her life, and always while wearing a porcelain mask to cover up her burns. Well, one random day, 2 kids went missing. All right, so here's the first thing about the film. So what gets me, the kids went missing, right? And the town ends up blaming Matilda, and it says they hung her. Now, watching this, you're like, okay, so parents woke up, kids went missing, they went out, they couldn't find the kids, so they pinned it on Matilda, they put this poor woman through a show trial, and then they hung her like a week later. But the movie goes on to say the children were found safe and sound the next morning. That means the parents wake up, right? And whatever, let's say they wake up at 6 a.m. It's the 1850s. They wake up at 6 a.m., right? They notice the kids aren't there. They get people in the town together. They go out and search for the kids. They can't find the kids, so they blame Matilda. They drag her to the square, no trial, and they just hang her. And it says they hang her in broad daylight. So this is East Coast, so like 6 p.m. they hang her. All this takes place in 12 hours. I have slept longer than 12 hours. Most of the time, I really do. I could have went to bed in this town, wake up, and been like, yeah, yeah, we burnt Matilda to death because the kids were lost. It's crazy. So a lot went down. They hung this poor woman, and while they're putting her up there to hang her, they tear off her mask, exposing her skin to the sun so it hurts her, and they're all ridiculing her, and she's in pain. And so she ends up cursing the town with her last breath. And she uses a line that I think is actually pretty legit. It's pretty good. She goes in her dying breath, she says, "What I took before in kindness, I will take forever in revenge." That's a pretty legit line. And then again, they find the kids the next morning. Whoopsie! The narrator goes on to say, like, the townspeople covered it up, but apparently the lore is still there, because now the town lore is Matilda will sometimes appear after a child loses their last baby tooth to seek vengeance on anyone that lays eyes on her while she's doing so. Okay, so you got the premise of the movie, you got the rules, you can't look at her, she doesn't like the light because it hurts her skin, right? And she's out to wreak vengeance and kill the kids after they lose their last baby tooth. Hilarious. All right, so fast forward 140 years, and we open on this disgusting shot of a kid fingering his tooth loose and then spitting up some blood. I can deal with a lot in horror movies. For some reason, that was just icky to me. I was like, you don't have to show that. Ugh, see some kid just getting up in there and spitting a load of blood. Disgusting. But he lost his last baby tooth. We know what's about to happen, right? So this is Kyle, and little Kyle about to get his visit. Now, the rules are clear. You don't look at her, and she might or might not come get your tooth. Either way, you just don't look at her. You don't pay attention to her. You don't pay her mind, or you're dead. You're dead. And if you don't, I guess she goes away and never comes back. Weird kind of rules, because she's not going after everyone, right? That would be ridiculous. It's just like every person in town would remember her. Right at some point, I don't know. Anyway, so Kyle's 12 years old at this point, and he's about to go to bed, but his little old crush, played by Emily Browning, the star of Sucker Punch, when she looks like she's 11 in this movie, but it turns out she was like 15. That's how old this movie is. Anyway, she comes in, sneaks into his house, they have a little chat, and he ends up asking her to the dance, and she's like, "I already told my mom to pick us up." So like, they have this little thing, whatever, and they kiss, and it's awkward because they're like 11 or 12 in the movie. Anywho, she kisses him, and she immediately goes, she knows he lost his tooth, right? They were talking about it. They kiss, and she's like, "First time shouldn't taste like blood. It should be sweet." I'm like, you knew he lost his tooth. You knew he was bleeding. So she sneaks out the window, but not before saying, "When the tooth fairy comes, don't peek." So again, the lore is out there, it's a story they tell the kids, whatever. Of course, Kyle wakes up in the middle of the night and he hears a bunch of creepy sounds, but instead of ignoring them like you're supposed to do, he gets up and tries to like sneak around the house to see what's up because he's hearing all these sounds. So he wakes up his mom, and his mom's like, "I'm gonna show you, okay?" And he's like, "Mom, don't go in there. Don't go in there." She's like, "I'm gonna show you, no one's in there," right? Which, firstly, if I ever had a kid and it was like there's a monster in the house, okay, so maybe it's not a monster, but it could be an intruder. You don't know. The kid could maybe think it's a monster, but it could be someone. Just take it seriously, right? And this house is huge because the hallway she's walking down is like a mile long. She's walking down to the room. She's like, "I'm gonna show you no one's there, all right, Kyle?" And she's walking, and he's like, "Stay in the light. By the way, we're gonna play a drinking game called Stay in the Light, and we're gonna see who gets alcohol poisoning before the end of this 86-minute movie, all right?" They say it a lot. The mom is going down the hallway. She goes in the room, and it's in the darkness, of course, and she looks around. She doesn't see anything, and she says the thing that, of course, you're not supposed to say in any movie, right? She goes, "You see, Kyle, there's nothing to be afraid of." And bam! The ghost comes out of nowhere and snaps her neck. Oh, like freaking Steven Seagal style. Just like out of nowhere. So Kyle's freaking out, screaming, of course. And we get the shot of Kyle hiding in the bathroom because the lights are on in there. And again, Matilda can't go in the light, and it pans out, and Matilda's kind of like hovering over the door. It's kind of a cool shot. But he makes it through to the morning, I guess, right? And by that time, the police come, the mom's dead, and there's no one else around. The dad's not around, I guess. So you hear the cops say, his mom put up a struggle. And if you see what happened to his mom with her neck snapped, I'm like, okay, this is 2003. We had DNA. We had CSI. Test the kid. Obviously, he's not going to have anything under his fingernails. Test the mom. They're not going to have each other's skin under their fingernails. It's like, what is happening, okay? But no, they just blame it on this 12-year-old kid and end up arresting him and sending him out into the world of, foster homes and mental hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. The neighbors are all around. You have Caitlin, his little girl crush, sitting sitting there watching him get arrested, and they have like a final glance goodbye. And then there's also this kid, Larry, who I guess is supposed to be their friend, and he's like, wow, it's crazy. So that's the introduction of the movie, right? Flash forward another 12 years, okay? And this is where the movie takes place in present terms. Also, the average age of someone losing their last baby tooth is around 12. So 12 years later would put them both around 24. And these actors do not look 24. I looked it up. They were actually 30 during the time that they filmed this. So it's not that big of a stretch, but I was like, they are not 24. 12 years later, and guess whose little brother is now suffering from the same dilemma that Kyle was suffering, because they sent him to the mental hospital because all this time he was like, it wasn't me. I didn't kill my mom. It was the tooth fairy. So everyone thinks he's crazy. He was having night terrors, I guess, during the time. Caitlin, his love interest's little brother, Michael, he is suffering from these night terrors as well. It flashes to Kyle, who is now an adult, and I guess still seemingly plagued by this, right? He's out, so I guess he spent time in the mental hospital, bounced around in some foster homes, and now he's an adult out on his own, living his life. This movie's funny because it cuts to like a sweet 2003 soundtrack. And we see Kyle have his thing for windows because he wants light in his apartment at all times. He has like 1 billion flashlights that he buys, and he's on antipsychotics and antidepressants, which I guess in 2003 was a big thing. 2024, it's like a Tuesday, like everybody be on something now. But I guess 21 years ago, it was like, oh man, he's on antipsychotics. And so he's like, I don't know, making sure all his flashlights had batteries and they're all charged and everything. And he gets a phone call. And guess who it is? It is Caitlin, which this is before Facebook. This is before MySpace. This is like when only a small amount of people had cell phones. Like I didn't have a cell phone in 2003. That was something only rich people had, or the rich kids in school had. So it's like, how did she find him? Because he's not in town anymore. Anyway, so she finds him somehow, some way. And basically she wants his opinion. She wants advice because I don't know why. I guess she thinks he's an expert on night terrors. And she's basically like, how did you get over it? But he didn't. And it like pans to one of his walls in the apartment, and it's just covered with black and white drawings of Matilda Dixon and creepy faces and everything just plastered on the wall, right? So it's like, I didn't. It's so funny. But I guess Kyle was in the mood for a vacay because he ends up coming to visit Darkness Falls anyway. So I think he was like in LA or somewhere on the West Coast. So he ends up flying or going back to the East Coast. All right, so Kyle's already in town and he automatically goes to the hospital to meet Michael, again, the little brother of his love interest, Caitlin, who he hasn't seen in 12 years. Remember, it's been 12 years since anyone has seen him. And within 5 minutes of meeting this kid who's like 12 himself, the kid's like, you've seen her too. And Kyle's like, nah, man, what are you talking about? And the kid's like, you've seen her. He's like, how do you know? And he's like, because it's the truth, which doesn't make any sense. That is not an answer. If someone's like, hey man, the Roman Empire fell in 476, and someone's like, how do you know? And you're like, because it's the truth. That is not how you answer that question, right? Anyways, within 5 minutes, this kid's like, you've seen her, she's gonna kill me, and sometimes I wonder if I should just turn off all the lights and let her take me. And I'm like, damn, this kid is depressed. He is like about done. 12 years old, having a psychotic break, and I guess he kind of already feels connected to Kyle. But Kyle's talking to him and trying to like be like, don't worry, it'll get better, et cetera, et cetera. At this point, he goes out in the hallway with Caitlin. You know, she walks in because, of course, perfect timing, right? And it's weird because Kyle is like, I guess, trying to convince himself that it was all just a story, but at the same time, he has enough flashlights to make a killing if there's ever some kind of zombie apocalypse or something like that. And Caitlin just wants to know how to help her brother. So at this point, she's just like, when your mom died, what really happened? Okay? Heavy question. And I don't know, it's just weird. It's like, what do you want him to say? Because in everyone else's mind, it was him. He just went crazy and killed his mom. But what does Caitlin think then, okay? Because she got this folder and it contains a lot of the similar type of drawings that Kyle had in his apartment, but they're all by Michael, right? It's kind of the same thing. And then Kyle goes, Michael just lose a tooth? And Caitlin's like, yeah, but come on, that was just a story. You don't really still think it was the tooth fairy, right? The vengeful tooth fairy. And Kyle's like, I don't. It's like, what do you want him to say then? What do you want from Kyle, really? But automatically, Kyle sees the drawings. He's like, this is a mistake. I gotta go. And Caitlin is like, wait, no. So as they're walking out of the hospital, in comes Larry, who apparently was another childhood friend that they had. Again, he's at the beginning when Kyle gets taken away as a kid. They bump into each other at the hospital because Larry's there because Caitlin's there. And Larry clearly has a thing for Caitlin, and Caitlin is not into it. So Larry offers to take them both out. He's like, Kyle, I haven't seen you in 12 years. How about we all go out? Crazy to me, right? I think of friends I had when I was 11, 12. I wouldn't know who they were today. I would have no idea. Maybe it's because I bounced around as a kid. I lived in a couple different states, but I don't remember any of my friends when I was 9, 10, 12. A lot of that could be trauma. Anyways, Larry's like, let me take y'all out. Let me take you out. Caitlin's like, no, because obviously my little brother is going through some stuff. I got to stay here at the hospital with him. And Kyle's like, I should go. And he's like, no, come on, man. Let me take you out. Let me buy you a drink. And Kyle's like, I don't drink. And Larry's like, one drink's not going to kill anybody, right? And I'm like, yeah, it might, Larry. So clearly there are no boundaries in this 2003 film. And even though Kyle has made it pretty evident that he doesn't drink, Larry's like, come on, let's drink, Larry. It cuts back to Michael, and Caitlin walks in, and Michael's already like, where's Kyle? Is he coming back? I guess they love each other now. I don't know. Again, they just met. This 12-year-old just met him, but kindred spirit, I guess, right? Both haunted by this evil tooth fairy. We get another cutaway scene and more epic mid-2000 rock song. As now we join Larry and Kyle in the local pub where Kyle clearly doesn't want to be. Anyways, they're talking. Larry's like, let me buy you a drink. And Kyle's holding up his pills. And he's like, I can't drink, dude. I'm on meds. Larry looks at him like he's disgusted with him. Just like, and he literally goes, ugh, Jesus. I'm like, fuck you, Larry. The dude's on meds. He cannot drink. You don't mix alcohol and antipsychotics, Larry. Anyways, Larry goes to the bar. He orders a beer from the frosted tip-haired bartender. Oh, 2003. I had those. And sitting at the bar is, I guess, what's supposed to be the local town bully, Ray. And he's already a little drunk. And he's like, who's your friend, Larry? And he's like, you remember Kyle Walsh? And they're like, Kyle Walsh? You know, again, it's been 12 years. I guess not a lot goes on in this town. So Ray, the bully guy, is already a little drunk. And he's just like, obviously something's going to happen, right? So Larry goes back to the table. He's got the beer, which Kyle obviously does not want. He's made clear he cannot drink it. But Larry's like, I got you a light beer. I'm like, oh, fucking Larry. Then out of nowhere, Larry's just like, you know, you left a lot of shit behind, Kyle. It is 12. It was 12 when all this happens. What are you talking about? You left a lot of shit. You've left a lot of shit behind, Kyle. It's been 12 years. You're both in your mid-20s now. What is happening in this town? All right, anyways, Kyle is clearly not comfortable, and he's kind of starting to hear stuff, and he doesn't really want to be there. He's probably having a panic attack. And it's becoming clear that Larry's just being a piece of shit because he's jealous of Kyle and Caitlin's relationship from when they were 12. But I guess it's still carried over because Larry can't get with Caitlin. And it's like, Larry, you're a piece of shit. So Larry's just kind of overcompensating. Definitely doesn't want Kyle back in the mix, right? Anyways, the bully Ray comes up, and he looks at Kyle, and he's like, what the hell you doing back here, freak? Just like, Jesus Christ. The bully takes his beer, drinks it, which I guess Kyle's like, whatever, and he throws it on Kyle, splashes Kyle. Kyle gets up, and the bully's like, come on, you want a piece? Clearly, Kyle does not. People in the back are like, kick his ass, Ray. And I'm like, why? Why are you people for this? He has done nothing. Anyways, Kyle ends up walking out being the bigger man, right? They're all clapping too. Larry does nothing because Larry's a little bitch. And all of a sudden, because we don't hear the door opening again, and, you know, Kyle's just out there on the balcony, and it's Ray. And Ray basically tackles him over the railing. They end up falling into the woods. Now they're in the woods surrounded by, you know, darkness. But Ray's like, eat this, and starts punching Kyle. And I'm just like, what? But Kyle, you know, there's darkness all around. His flashlight fell off, and he hears the tooth fairy because she's going to appear whenever he's around darkness. Okay. And so he sees like a glimpse of her in the side. And so he starts to freak out. He flips Ray over, and he starts punching him, grabs his flashlight, ends up running away. Ray's like, you know, he's drunk. He's out of it. He just got punched a little bit, but he's still screaming at Kyle. He's like, come back. I'm going to kick your ass. These are my woods. Nobody messes with me. And immediately the tooth fairy takes him out, man, just like swishes him and takes him up out of nowhere. So I guess the Tooth Fairy in this mythology is kind of following Michael Myers rules where like she's gonna kill anyone that's in the way or around while she's pursuing Kyle, right? Because Kyle got away from her. Remember, that's the whole point. That's why she's still after Kyle, because he lost his tooth as a kid and looked at her, but she hasn't got him yet because he's always been in light or had a flashlight or stayed like around some light. Been doing it for 12 years, okay? So he runs away. Now, again, they were in that bar and they fell into woods and no one can find them. So now there's this little search party that they got together and they're all searching for Ray and for Kyle, right? And the sheriff's there and they're all kind of walking through the woods. And the sheriff's basically like to Larry, hey, just stay here, Larry. And Larry's like, yeah, absolutely, because Larry's a little bitch. And he ends up even talking to himself. He's like, Larry, you're a grown man. You're completely safe. And of course, in the horror world, that means something's about to happen. And Ray falls on Larry dead from a tree. Okay, from a big ass tree. Now, Ray's big. Ray's got to be like 225, okay? Kyle, not that big of a guy, pretty skinny. There's no way Kyle could have carried him up into that tree. I was helping a former boss the other day with some coffee beans, a 150-pound bag of coffee beans. We were both lifting that up into a table, and we were both winded doing that. There's no way that Kyle could have drug. First of all, how you get up in the tree, but I mean, he's not a leopard. He didn't drag him up there with his jaws, his powerful jaws. So point that Ray was up there anyways and fell onto Larry and he's all scratched up because that's what the Tooth Fairy does, I guess. She scratches the shit out of you and just tears you up. So whatever, they all think Kyle killed Ray now, right? And drug him up into the tree and then he just fell on Larry and Larry freaks out. Kyle ends up coming back to the hospital. He is all like, torn up. He's all dirty and everything because Ray tackled him into the woods. And she's like, what happened? And he's like, listen, don't give Michael any more tests. And she's like, what? Don't let them prod and poke him. I was prodded and poked my whole life, and all it did was lead to more trauma, which I guess makes sense. Kind of remind me of The Exorcist. Like, they spend that whole movie just testing Reagan because they don't know what's wrong with her. But that's basically what he's saying. He's like, don't let them test him anymore. He's having night terrors, whatever, even though he knows it's more than that. But he's like, don't let them test him anymore. It's just going to cause him to get more messed up. So, of course, they think he's killed Ray. So the cops show up and they're like, you got to come with us, man. So they bring him in. They're questioning him. And the sheriff kind of like starts shaming him and stuff for his medical history. And of course, everyone in town thinks he killed his mom. So they're already a little leery of him. But I'm like, man, the dude was 12. And even if that were the case, right? He served his time. He went to a mental hospital. He did what he needed to do. Obviously, he's out. So they think, at least in the law and in the medical mind, he is like safe for society, whatever, okay? They start berating him. The sheriff sees that he's got antidepressants and antipsychotics and everything, so they're a little leery anyway, and they think that he killed Ray. And the sheriff starts showing him pictures. Now, again, Ray is all scratched up. I'm like, listen, just do what you didn't do when he was a kid. Test his fingernails, right? See what he has under there. And there's no CSI investigation in this team. Like, they would be so... What was the name of that guy that would take off his glasses? Yeah!
They call it speed dating. Owner says our victim had 15 dates.
Well, you know what they say, Frank. Speed kills.
He would be so disappointed in their investigative work. Caitlin's there too, I guess, giving her testimony. She's talking to another cop and she's like, don't do this. He's a good man. And I'm like, you haven't seen him in 12 years. You really don't know if Kyle's a good man or not, but that's neither here nor there. They got probable cause to hold Kyle, right? Because everyone knows that they had an argument at the bar, which really it was just Ray was being a bully to Kyle. Kyle walked away, but whatever. So they put Kyle in a cell, but he's got some light. And while the cop does so, he's like, keep working on your crap story. Hope you got a good lawyer. And I'm just like, why are these cops being such dicks, man? It's like, that's not even your part of the job. Your part is just to like, arrest if they're supposed to be arrested. You don't got to berate the guy while he's in there. Whole other story. All right, so go back to the hospital. Little Michael is dreaming and he's freaking out. He's having a little psychotic break. But is it a psychotic break or is the Tooth Fairy about to haunt him as well, right? He looked at Tooth Fairy as well, but he's been staying in the light too. So they're both going through the same thing. Stupid nurses suck at their job and Michael ends up locked in his bathroom and he's freaked out, but all the lights are on. They finally break in there and it looks like he's cut himself, but we all know what happened. The Tooth Fairy like slashed him a little bit before he got into the light. So the doctors, the nurses, Caitlin freaking out. They're like, what are we going to do? And basically the doctors, the psychiatrists, they suggest that Michael should face his fear head on, right? So they suggest putting him in a sensory deprivation chamber. Basically shut out all the lights. He'll be there to face the fear. And once he realizes that he can be in the dark and nothing's going to happen, then he'll get over it. We know that's not the case, right? But Caitlin's like, what are my other choices? And the psychiatrist is like, aggressive medication and years of counseling. So they're like weighing the options. They're like, we got to do something, because if he has another psychotic break, he could really hurt himself. He could hurt someone else. So you can kind of see their point of view, right? Of course, in real life, there's not going to be a vengeful, scary tooth fairy. It takes me out. I'm just gone right then and there. But anyways, in the story, that's what they're going to do, right? So they decide, she's like, all right, because Caitlin isn't sold on the tooth fairy story yet. She doesn't know. She's like, all right, we'll put him in sensory deprivation tank and he'll face his fear. He'll face the darkness. What could go wrong, right? Kyle ends up being bailed out by Larry the next morning. Larry's like, a simple thank you would be nice, you know, because Larry's a little bitch. Before they go, Kyle's like, hey, where's my stuff? To the cops. He's like, can I get my flashlights? And they're like, they're still being processed in the lab. I'm like, you're testing his flashlights? What do you think are going to be on flash? I guess if they beat him to death, but there's obviously no blood. Not doing their work. So they end up going to the local gun store, but Kyle's not buying guns. He's just buying tons and tons of flashlights. The clerk's like, do you want a pistol? And he's like, nah. The clerk walks away for a second, and Kyle noticed he left his keys there to, I guess, the gun cabinet. So Kyle takes a gun anyways. I guess he didn't want to buy it, so it wouldn't be registered to him. I don't know, but he takes a gun. Or does he? It doesn't really show us yet. Actually, backtrack that. Does he take a gun? I don't know. Guess we'll see later. But he has his duffel bag full of flashlights. Him and Larry get into the car, and Kyle thinks that Larry's taking them to the hospital to see Michael and Caitlin, but they're driving a while. And Larry's basically like, why'd you come back, man? You're all she had to think about. I'm again like, it'd been 12 years. How lame is this town? How lame are the options in this town that all she had to think about for the next 12 years was Kyle, the psychotic kid that, let's face it, you were 12 and he's being accused of murdering his mom. You don't know better. I guess she hung on to that puppy love. I mean, I get it. When I was like 13, 14, my first real girlfriend, she broke up with me. I was crushed for a while, but I don't know, man. 12 years is like, wow, still holding on to that. It's crazy. But Larry, he's still trying to get with Caitlin too. It's like, but Larry, you need to move on, man. Larry, you ain't got no chance with her. Bitch ass Larry. Anyway, so they're driving. And while this is all happening, like in the backdrop, Michael's about to be put into the sensory deprivation tank, right? And Larry knows this. And Kyle's like, so what's happening? And they're like, they're going to put him in the sensory deprivation tank. And Kyle's like, you got to take me to the hospital. Why are they doing that? And Larry's like, to prevent him from becoming the next Kyle Wash. I'm like, fuck you, Larry. How dare? No, they're driving. He's like, where are you taking me? He's like, I'm taking you out of town, man. So Larry's an asshole. He doesn't want him to get in the middle of him and his relationship with Caitlin. That's not happening. So Kyle pulls out the gun. So yeah, he took the gun from the gun store. And he's like, take me back. And then immediately something hits the top of the car. And then the car crashes into a tree that's just, for some reason, in the middle of the road, out of nowhere. And they're going like 40 miles an hour, 40, 50, maybe 60 miles an hour. Kyle's not wearing a seatbelt. He gets flung through the windshield, right? Which in the real world, you're dead. You're dead flying 30 miles an hour through the windshield out of a car. Hits this giant ass tree. All of a sudden, they're in the woods again. Again, the car didn't swerve. It was going straight this whole time. So there's just this giant tree in the middle of the highway, whatever. The car dies, right? And his flashlight's wherever, so it's dark. And they start to hear noises, right? Kyle knows it's a tooth fairy. He's like, don't look at her, Larry. Don't look at her, Larry. Larry's like, what? He looks up. He's like, don't look at her, man. Larry looks at her, man. She immediately takes him. Kyle was right all along. Ah, too bad, Larry. Your bitch ass is dead. All right. So at this point, Kyle gets in the car, starts the car up, still running after plowing in that giant ass tree at like at least 40 miles an hour. Probably was more like 50, 60 miles an hour, whatever. Starts it right up. And ends up turning around, going back to the hospital, right? Tooth Fairy chasing him along the way. Arrives at the hospital right before Michael is entering the sensory deprivation chamber thing, and right as the final piece of light is closing, and he's like, get him out. Caitlin sees him, is like, get him out immediately. Like, boom, Michael's pulled out of there. He's like, don't let him put him in the light, right? He's freaking out. The cops are there already because he called ahead of the time, and then the nurse that answered like called the police because like, okay, whatever. Cops are getting there. They're trying to arrest Kyle. They're like, stop resisting. I'm like, he's not resisting. But they take him back in, right? Which I guess they get him for, I don't know, trespassing or some shit. They get him, they put him back in the cell, and then one of the cops calls the sheriff, which I guess is his dad, and he's like, we got him, Dad. And he's like, all right, whatever. So Michael and Caitlin still at the hospital, but she's not going to put him in the deprivation chamber. She had a change of heart because Kyle was like, don't do it. Don't put him in the deprivation chamber. And even Michael was like, if you put me in the dark, she's going to get me. Like, he clearly did not want to go in there anyway. It cuts to another scene. Caitlin is reading a story about the Tooth Fairy to Michael because I guess she don't give a shit about trauma. I guess she was trying to be like, look, Tooth Fairy is really a nice little story. Not. Kyle's in the jail cell. Larry's somewhere dead. And immediately there's a blackout, right? So darkness has fell. It's dark everywhere now. She's done fucking around. Matilda Dixon ain't playing with this town anymore. The entire town goes dark. And then immediately Michael's like, we're all gonna die.
We're all gonna die.
And then we get a actually legitimately funny line from one of the cops because there's a blackout and they're hearing noise like down in the basement or whatever in the cop place.
Bat, go see what that was.
Well, you go see what that was.
I outrank you.
Lead by example and go see what it was.
It was legitimately funny. They go down there because they're hearing noises in the police station, right? It's darkness everywhere. Kyle knows what's about to happen. He's like, give me a flashlight. Give me a flashlight. They're like, shut up, Kyle. And then they go and they're investigating the noises. The police station had generators, so there's some lights around, I guess, being run by the generators or whatever. It cuts back to Kyle, and there's this one cop that's kind of messing with him, shining a light in his eyes. He's like, what's wrong, Kyle? Is she gonna get me? And Kyle's like, yeah. And she does. Basically what happens is she makes her presence known and she starts taking people out and she starts flying in front of all the lights. And so all the cops are trying to shoot this specter that's just flying around, but Matilda's flying in front of the lights. So they end up shooting the light and Kyle's like, no, stay in the light. Stop shooting. She's making you shoot the lights. They're all dumb, but they all realize, oh, wow, Kyle was right all along. Kyle ends up getting the keys. They like fall towards him, I think. Or maybe one of the cops throw him the keys. I don't know. He gets the keys. He gets out of the cell. Finally, these cops see, but like most of them are dead at this point. But the sheriff's son, whose name is Matt, he's like, oh man, he's been a dick to Kyle. But he was like, wow, you were right. It flashes back to Michael and Caitlin in the hospital. Again, there's a blackout, but Caitlin hasn't seen any evidence about the Tooth Fairy. So she still thinks it's just in Michael's mind, right? But Michael's like, get under the bed, get under the bed. And Caitlin's like, stop, we don't need to do this. Come on. But then she started hearing noises. And she's like, all right, maybe we should get under the bed. And Matilda makes her presence known there as well. So now everyone knows Matilda's real. This Tooth Fairy, vengeful spirit, is out to get them, right? The main characters realize. So Matilda's going after Michael. She's trying to kill him too. And Caitlin and Michael are running through the hospital. They turn the corner and there's Kyle and he grabs him and they all like three get in this elevator. And Michael's like, I knew you'd come back. It was like the third time you've ever met this guy. But they're all in the elevator. Caitlin's like, what is happening? There's still a blackout. The elevator gets stuck because there's a blackout, but everyone sees her now. And so they break out of the elevator. There's doctors, there's nurses, and they're like, what's going on? And Kyle's like, we just gotta stay in the light. The doctor saw her in there and he's like, oh shit. Kyle's like, it's cool. I know what to do. We just stay in the light, right? They end up getting to the stairs but there's only lights in certain areas. So they end up like jumping. They're just like, we got to jump down the stairs. And the doctor's like, you crazy? And Kyle's like, a little bit. So they're jumping from the light, trying to get into the light. I guess it's faster to jump down there than take the stairs, actually. So they're trying to jump into the light before Matilda can grab them. But Matilda's like picking them off like she's a hawk. At one point, this bitch ass doctor almost runs away and leaves them all. And Kyle ends up like, oh man, he's like stuck in the dark for a second. And the Tooth Fairy, she runs around and she sees Kyle and they're like face to face. And she goes, like you knew who it was the entire time. But then headlights come out of nowhere, and so it lightens the place up, and then Matilda she flashes away, right? The light hurts her. It's the sheriff's son, it's Matt. He arrived. And they all pile in his car and they're like, we gotta get to the lighthouse. We gotta relight the tower, bring light back to the town. The doctor's like, why don't we just stay in the car and keep driving? She can't get us while in their car. Immediately takes him out, man. He's ripped out of the car by Matilda. Dead. He's like, you got any light? There's like kerosene lamps in the car. So they take the kerosene lamps and they light those lamps. So the new plan is get to the light tower, light the light tower, bring light back to the town as best they can, and they'll stay around light being at the light tower. They arrive to the light tower, right? And they're all going all up. And I guess they have to like put gas in the generator, but then the switch to light the light is at the very, very top or whatever. So there's gas in the light tower, but then there's also gas everywhere else. Foreshadowing, they spill gas everywhere else, whatever. They're going up the spiral staircase up the lighthouse tower. And so they get to the top, and I forget, they got to go back down and light it for, man, I forget how.
What happened? I don't know. Must be a fuel line blockage, or I don't know, it's not getting to the generator.
So Kyle and Matt go back down, but at one point they need more light. It goes dark for a second, and then Matilda grabs poor Matt. Matt's gone. Kyle gets knocked out, and Caitlin and Michael are just stuck up at the top of the tower. It's still dark. All they have are glow sticks left. It gets quiet. You know she's about to come. All of a sudden, glass breaks around the light tower. Matilda is there. She picks Caitlin up, but she gets loose, but she ends up dropping Caitlin, and Caitlin smacks down. Like, in real life, she probably would have broke her back and her neck, but she like smacks down, she falls down. Kyle sees what happened and he's trying to get to her. He's like, Michael, get down here. Michael, get down here. Matilda's just like floating up there, and she tries to reach for Kyle, but there's like a little bit of light, I guess, from one of the lamps or something shining through, and it burns her hand for a second. So she reaches back out. And so they're all like in a part of Lighthouse where all they have to do is flip this switch and it'll turn the lights back on, but they can't reach it. And Michael's small, but he can get to it. So they're like, Michael, flip the switch before Matilda gets to him. In the last moment, Michael, of course, flips the switch. And so lights everywhere. And Matilda's like freaking out a little bit, getting burnt, and disintegrates, and she's gone. It's over. They beat her. Or did they? No, they didn't beat her. She comes back. And Michael rips her mask off midair. It's porcelain, right? The mask breaks on the ground. There's teeth that shatters everywhere. And legit, Matilda looks pretty freaky without her mask. Like, it's actually pretty gruesome what what she really looks like underneath all that. But she's floating up there, right? And some stuff, again, is caught on fire during this time period. But Matilda has Kyle lifting up into the air, right? She's about to kill him. But there's some like flames behind Kyle. And he ends up lighting his sleeve on fire. And he looks at Matilda and he's like, I see you, bitch. And he punches her with the fire, and she catches on fire, and she drops Kyle to the floor. And this time Matilda her whole body catches on fire. And we know that it's real this time because she explodes. And we know that it's real this time because the fire was blue. And so she's gone for good. And it's Michael, Kyle, and Caitlin are all huddled together, the last remaining survivors, and they're all hugging. And it zooms in on one of the teeth that were laid on the floor, just sitting there. It cuts to another family. I guess this is sometime later. And as a little boy just lost his last tooth, his dad's tucking him in. And he's like, all right, go to bed, son. Remember, don't peek or whatever. And dad leaves and the kid hears some sound. Is it the tooth fairy? And we got our last jump scare of the movie, but it's really the mom. And she's like, oh, he's like, don't worry, it's just me, sweetie. And the mom is replacing the tooth with a quarter. And then that's it. That's the end of Darkness Falls. That is the movie. Play by play. All right. I know that was a lot. And I know it's a lot because I'm about to lose my voice already. If I'd have seen it in the theaters back then, I would have totally thought I had wasted my money and would have been really upset and would have thought it was dumb. Watching it now, I would say that, obviously it's like, again, a product of its time. It's not a very good horror movie, but I think you could watch it and have fun watching it today. Again, if you play the drinking game, every time Kyle or someone says stay in the light, someone will be dead before the end of the movie if you're taking shots, okay? So maybe don't do that, but just be aware. But I think it could be one of those fun movies that a group of people watch like on Halloween or whatever. Now, Russell, I think it probably would still scare you, bud, okay? If nothing else, for the myriad of jump scares that are throughout the entire movie. So I don't know. You should watch it and tell me what you think, though. Let's pretend this came out yesterday, okay? I would say it's not worth a watch. So this is where it gets hard for this channel, all right? So obviously this channel is still very new, and I'm still figuring out my format, so to speak. But like, rating a film like this is obviously going to be different than rating like a Nightmare on Elm Street or even like an old Dracula from the 30s, okay? They're both good in their own rights, but comparatively, it's something entirely different. Even if I compared those two movies to like The Substance or Heretic or Terrifier 3. So I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. Ultimately, I just want to watch movies and tell you guys about them, right? If I think you should watch them, I want to tell you should watch them. If I think they're crap, I want to tell you they're crap. If it's something more interesting that I think you could dive deeper into and get a lot of symbolism, and we could talk about my feelings on Joker 2 and how everyone's hating on it, but how I think it's actually a pretty good movie if you look at it this certain light, or if we talk about Mads and how I think it's a cool, new, unique twist on the zombie genre, then I want to talk about that. So all in all, even something like this type of video is different when compared to those type of videos. I don't know. I guess I'll just keep on experimenting, and y'all will just let me know what type of videos you want to see and what you like and what you don't like. For instance, another one of my friends, Corey, suggested The Witch. I'm a history major, so you know I'm going to get into some like witch trial history and stuff like that from back in the day. So it's really just going to depend on the movie and I guess how I view it and what I want to talk about, unless you guys give me something definite. Like if you want me to talk about a certain aspect of a movie, I can do that too. Just know that I'm still figuring out this channel as we go. Ultimately, if you're along for the ride, then I'm having a good time, and I thank you all for being along for the ride. So just stick with me as we go. All in all, the real value of this film is like a meh, like it's probably not worth your time. But if you want to have fun with it, then it is worth your time. I give it 1 Scaredy Cal just because it's got like 20 jump scares through the whole thing. Otherwise, it's not scary, but it might be scary to you, Russell. I don't know. Okay, y'all tell me what you think. Have you seen this movie? Will you watch it now? Do you like this type of video? Did you like the retelling, the recapping? I know it was a lot. It was a 21-year-old movie, and I just wanted to have some fun with it. If you stayed with it this long, I thank you for sticking with me, and we're just going to keep doing what we do here at The Real Value. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Like, subscribe, share. See me next time, because I can't see you. Peace. Losing my voice already. I think the last half of that got a little crazy. Hope it makes sense.